Look at your closest friends, your current ambitions, and the way you speak when you are trying to impress someone. Now, try to strip all of that away. What is actually left underneath? Most of us move through life believing we possess a solid, unshakable core identity. We think our tastes, our values, and our reactions belong entirely to us. But behavioral psychology reveals a far more unsettling truth. We are not solitary architects of our own personalities. Instead, we are walking mirrors, constantly reflecting and absorbing the social frequencies of the environments we inhabit. Every single day, without your conscious permission, social mirrors are quietly rewriting who you are, shaping your desires, and altering your internal narrative. Think about the last time you adopted a phrase, a mannerism, or an opinion just because someone you admired held it. It felt natural, didn't it? It felt like your own brilliant realization. But that is the subtle genius of social engineering. It makes external programming feel like internal awakening. To understand how this happens, we have to look past the surface of daily interaction and dive deep into the hidden mechanics of human adaptation. Human beings are biologically wired for survival through belonging. Evolutionary history taught us that isolation meant death, so our brains developed an invisible, hypervigilant radar system designed to scan, match, and blend in with the surrounding tribe. This is not just a personality quirk, it is a fundamental survival mechanism deeply embedded in our neural architecture. When you enter a room, your mirror neurons instantly fire, tracking micro-expressions, vocal inflections, and postural shifts. Within milliseconds, your brain begins calculating the exact behavioral adjustment required to minimize friction and maximize social acceptance. You change your vocabulary when talking to your boss compared to your closest friend. You adjust your posture when walking into a high-status environment. These shifts seem trivial, but when they are repeated thousands of times over years, they stop being mere costumes. They become the skin you wear. The tragedy of the phantom self is that the mask eventually fuses with the face. You start believing that the reflection staring back at you in the social mirror is your true self. Take a moment right now to pause and genuinely ask yourself, how many of your current goals are actually yours, and how many were planted there by a society that conditioned you to crave specific markers of success? We chase status, validation, and approval because our ancestral wiring mistakes social standing for physical survival. But in the modern world, this wiring is frequently hijacked. Advertisers, politicians, and social manipulators do not need to force you to comply, they simply design environments where compliance feels like self-expression. They create the mirror, show you an idealized reflection of what you could be, and watch as your own psychological need for alignment drives you straight into their trap. Take a breath and think about that for a second. Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own life, wondering how you ended up in a career, a relationship, or a mindset that feels entirely misaligned with your soul? That dissonance is the sound of your authentic self rattling against the cage of your conditioned persona. It is the friction between who you were born to be and who the social mirror demanded you become. Before we break down the exact psychological triggers that keep you trapped in this cycle, take a quick second to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below sharing whether you have ever felt like you were living someone else's life. Now, let us look at how this mirroring effect is deliberately weaponized in modern social dynamics. Consider the psychological phenomenon known as strategic mirroring. Skilled influencers, master negotiators, and manipulators do not just happen to match your energy, they deploy it as a precise instrument of control. By subtly mimicking your body language, your speech rhythm, and your emotional tone, they bypass your critical thinking faculties. Your brain registers the similarity and instantly lowers its defense mechanisms. It whispers a primitive message to your subconscious: this person is like me, therefore this person is safe. Once that gate is unlocked, they can plant suggestions, alter your perceptions, and guide your decisions with startling ease. You think you are bonding over shared traits, but you are actually walking into a carefully constructed echo chamber of influence. This is why understanding the architecture of the phantom self is not just an intellectual exercise, it is an absolute necessity for self-defense. If you do not know where your boundaries end and external conditioning begins, you will spend your entire life fighting battles you never chose for prizes that never mattered. The most dangerous prison is the one where the bars are invisible, and the inmate believes they are the warden. As you navigate your daily interactions, you begin to notice the subtle ways people surrender their autonomy for the sweet, addictive drug of social validation. Every time you swallow an opinion to keep the peace, every time you buy something you do not need to impress people you do not like, and every time you mold your personality to fit a temporary room, you feed the phantom self. You starve the original, unconditioned spark that makes you uniquely human. But awareness is the first and most lethal weapon against psychological conditioning. The moment you catch yourself performing for an audience that does not even exist, the spell begins to break. You start reclaiming the real estate of your own mind. Stay with me, because as we move deeper into this psychological labyrinth, we are going to uncover the exact cognitive tipping point where passive adaptation transforms into active self-ownership, and how you can shatter the social mirrors for good. Shattering the social mirrors requires an uncomfortable confrontation with the reality of your daily choices. Most people spend their lives avoiding this discomfort because looking directly at your conditioned self feels like standing in front of a mirror and realizing the person staring back is a stranger. We wrap ourselves in familiar routines, surround ourselves with people who reinforce our current illusions, and call it peace. But true psychological freedom is never found in comfort, it is forged in the fires of radical self-awareness. Let us examine how your environment acts as a silent architect, constructing your beliefs long before you ever develop the critical thinking skills to question them. Think about your deepest core values, the things you would passionately argue for at a dinner table. Now trace the origin of those beliefs. Did you arrive at them through rigorous independent investigation, or were they handed to you by parents, teachers, and cultural institutions during a time in your life when your mind was completely porous? Cognitive psychology demonstrates that human beings possess an innate confirmation bias that aggressively filters out any data contradicting our established programming. We do not see the world as it is, we see the world as our conditioning has taught us to interpret it. This means that much of what you call your perspective is actually just an inherited lens. When you walk through life wearing someone else's glasses, every horizon you look at is pre-framed by their limitations. Recognizing this is both terrifying and liberating. It is terrifying because it strips away the comforting certainty of your identity. It is liberating because the moment you realize your beliefs are software, you also realize you have the power to uninstall them. Take a moment right now to reflect on this. What is one major opinion you hold that you have never once tested against opposing evidence? Drop a quick comment below with your thoughts, and make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the rest of this deep dive into the human mind. Now, let us explore the mechanics of how high-status groups and social hierarchies exploit this vulnerability through peer pressure and conformity loops. In social psychology, the famous Asch conformity experiments proved something deeply disturbing about human nature. Ordinary individuals, presented with an obviously incorrect consensus from a group of strangers, routinely chose to abandon their own undeniable sensory evidence just to avoid standing out. They would rather look at a clear line, know it is short, and yet agree it is long because everyone else said so. This is the raw power of the social mirror in a laboratory setting. Now scale that experiment up to the modern digital world, where millions of digital mirrors surround you 24 hours a day. Every social media feed, every trending opinion, and every cultural milestone acts as an invisible peer pressure engine, dictating what you should love, what you should hate, and how you should feel about your own progress. If your peers are constantly measuring success by financial display, your brain adopts that metric as its own internal scoreboard, regardless of whether wealth aligns with your true values. You end up running a marathon on a track you never chose, fueled by anxiety you never asked for, chasing a finish line that keeps moving every time you get close. This is why so many high-achieving individuals experience profound burnout. They wake up one day at the top of a mountain they never actually wanted to climb, realizing they spent their entire lives satisfying a crowd that does not even care about them. The phantom self thrives in the gap between your external achievements and your internal emptiness. To close that gap, you must learn to practice radical solitude. Not loneliness, which is an emotional state of isolation, but solitude, which is the sacred art of being alone with your unmasked thoughts. In a world engineered to keep your attention constantly fragmented by external noise, silence feels agonizing at first. The moment you turn off your phone, sit in a quiet room, and stop performing for an invisible audience, the noise of your conditioning starts to scream. Your mind will try to pull you back into distraction because distraction is safe, while introspection requires courage. But if you can sit with that discomfort, if you can watch your thoughts without identifying with every single one of them, something remarkable happens. The static clears. The phantom self begins to dissolve, and beneath the layers of social polish, inherited trauma, and manufactured desires, you finally catch a glimpse of the real, unadulterated core of who you are. This brings us to a crucial psychological turning point in our exploration, where we must look at how emotional intelligence acts as a shield against external manipulation, and how mastering your own internal state transforms you from a passive mirror into an active sovereign of your own mind. Stepping into the territory of emotional intelligence as a defensive shield brings us face to face with the exact mechanisms manipulators use to hijack your internal state. Emotional intelligence is frequently misunderstood as merely being nice, keeping the peace, or understanding how other people feel. But at its highest, most strategic level, true emotional intelligence is absolute sovereignty over your own nervous system. When you lack this mastery, your emotions become a public utility. Anyone with a basic understanding of behavioral triggers can walk into your life, press the right psychological buttons, and watch you react with predictable precision. They trigger your anger to make you look irrational, they trigger your guilt to extract compliance, or they trigger your insecurity to make you dependent on their validation. Think about the last time someone baited you into an argument or made you feel small with a backhanded compliment. Your physiological response, heart racing, jaw tightening, adrenaline spiking, happened before your rational mind even had a chance to evaluate the situation. That is because your emotional triggers are pre-programmed vulnerabilities installed by your environment, your past conditioning, and your social interactions. If you do not map your own triggers, other people will map them for you and use them as remote controls for your behavior. This is the hidden dark side of interpersonal dynamics. Many relationships, workplaces, and social circles are not built on mutual respect or authentic connection, they are subtle power structures governed by emotional leverage. One person holds the leverage because the other person has not yet learned how to master their own internal reactions. Take a moment to consider the people in your life right now. Who has the easiest access to your peace? Who can ruin your entire day with a single sentence or a dismissive look? That exact vulnerability is the leash that keeps you bound to the phantom self. Breaking that leash does not mean becoming cold, emotionless, or closed off from the world. In fact, emotional sovereignty requires deep vulnerability and immense self-awareness. It means feeling the anger, the fear, or the rejection, but refusing to let those transient states dictate your actions. It means pausing in the vital space between stimulus and response, a space so brilliantly highlighted by Viktor Frankl, where your true freedom actually lives. Every time you catch yourself reacting automatically out of pride, fear, or the desperate need to fit in, and you choose instead to respond with calculated calm, you starve the phantom self of its fuel. Before we uncover the final, most sophisticated layer of psychological independence and how to permanently reclaim your mind from social engineering, take a quick second to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know what trigger you are actively working on mastering in your own life. Now, let us examine how high-level influence and persuasion operate in the shadows of everyday conversation. Most people assume that manipulation looks like blatant lying, overt threats, or aggressive pressure. But the most dangerous forms of psychological control are wrapped in the soft velvet of charm, flattery, and apparent benevolence. A master manipulator does not force you to walk into a trap, they arrange the environment so gracefully that you invite them in yourself. They use principles like reciprocity, making you feel indebted through unasked for favors, or social proof, convincing you that everyone else is already doing what they want you to do. They weaponize your empathy by playing the victim, knowing that your conditioning prevents you from walking away from someone in distress. This is why good people, as we touched on earlier, so often find themselves trapped in lopsided dynamics. Your very virtues are systematically converted into liabilities by individuals who understand how to game your psychological programming. Recognizing this is not an excuse to become cynical or to view every human interaction as a battlefield. Rather, it is about developing high-resolution psychological vision. When you can see the invisible wires of influence operating beneath the polite small talk and charming smiles, the illusion shatters. You stop reacting to the performance and start observing the mechanics. Stay right here with me, because as we transition into the next phase of this documentary, we are going to break down the exact daily blueprint for maintaining unbreakable mental sovereignty in a world designed to dissolve your individuality. Maintaining unbreakable mental sovereignty in a world specifically engineered to dissolve your individuality requires a deliberate, daily tactical retreat from external noise. You cannot protect a castle if you leave the gates wide open and invite every passing merchant to pitch their tent in your courtyard. Yet that is precisely how most people live, allowing a relentless stream of notifications, cultural trends, opinions, and manufactured emergencies to flood their consciousness from the moment they wake up until the second they fall asleep. Every time you check your phone before your feet even touch the floor in the morning, you are willingly handing over the steering wheel of your mind to algorithms designed to manufacture anxiety, comparison, and urgency. You are letting external forces dictate your emotional baseline before you have even had a chance to anchor yourself in reality. To reclaim your autonomy, you have to institute strict psychological boundaries. This means treating your attention not as an infinite public park, but as a heavily guarded, sacred fortress. Start protecting your mornings like your life depends on it, because your mental clarity actually does. Give yourself at least the first hour of the day without touching a screen, without consuming someone else's opinions, and without checking what the world expects from you. Instead, use that quiet window to reconnect with your own internal compass. Ask yourself simple, grounding questions. What do I actually want to accomplish today, and which of my goals are genuinely mine versus inherited echoes of the phantom self? Take a quick moment right now to reflect on your own daily media consumption habits, and drop a comment below sharing one boundary you are going to implement starting tomorrow to protect your peace. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the final stretch of this psychological blueprint. Now, let us look at the profound transformation that occurs when you finally stop performing for an audience that does not exist. Most social anxiety, chronic stress, and imposter syndrome stem from the exhausting habit of viewing yourself through the eyes of other people. You are constantly running a background simulation in your brain, asking yourself, how do I look right now? Am I saying the right thing? Are they judging me? That background simulation consumes an immense amount of cognitive bandwidth, leaving you drained, anxious, and perpetually disconnected from your actual power. When you shift your focus from external performance to internal alignment, everything changes. You stop asking whether people approve of you and start asking whether you approve of them. You realize that most people are too wrapped up in their own insecure performances to pay close attention to yours anyway. They are too busy worrying about their own phantom selves to notice your temporary flaws. Understanding this is deeply liberating. It frees you from the invisible prison of social approval and allows you to move through the world with quiet, unshakable confidence. As we approach the culmination of this exploration, prepare yourself for the final, most vital realization about breaking the social mirrors and stepping into authentic, sovereign power. Stepping into authentic, sovereign power means accepting a profound and sometimes lonely truth: true individuality cannot exist inside a crowd. When you finally shatter the social mirrors, stop running on borrowed ambitions, and dismantle the invisible programming of your conditioning, the world around you shifts. People who benefited from your compliance will suddenly find you difficult. Those who relied on your emotional volatility will call you cold. But what feels like rejection from the outside is actually your true boundary locking into place. You are no longer a reflection of everyone else's expectations. You are a singular, deliberate force of nature. Think about the energy you waste every single day trying to fit into boxes that were never built for your dimensions. Imagine what your life would look like if you redirected that exact same energy toward mastering your own mind, fortifying your emotional boundaries, and pursuing goals that make your own soul come alive. The phantom self was never your protector. It was merely a temporary costume you wore while you were too afraid to step into the arena as your unmasked, unfiltered self. But now, the illusion has been stripped away. You see the machinery of influence for what it is. You understand how social mirrors operate, how emotional triggers are exploited, and how radical solitude clears the static of external noise. The choice is entirely yours. You can return to the comfortable sleep of automated conformity, letting society write your script and dictate your worth, or you can take the pen back, step out of the reflection, and author a reality that belongs exclusively to you. The mirror is broken, the simulation is exposed, and the path forward is completely unwritten. As you carry these insights out into the world, remember that your mind is the only true territory you will ever own. Protect it fiercely, question your conditioning relentlessly, and never let an outside force tell you who you are supposed to be. If this journey resonated deep within your core, take a final moment to hit that subscribe button, drop a comment below sharing your biggest takeaway from this exploration, and share this video with someone who needs to wake up from the mirror today. Thank you for staying until the very end, and until next time, stay aware, stay sovereign, and keep questioning the invisible architecture of your mind.